What if the greatest battle you ever fought wasn't with the world outside but with your own mind? This is the story of Alina, a young woman who looked perfectly fine to everyone around her, but behind closed doors, she was drowning in whispers. Only she could hear, voices that told her she was weak, worthless, and alone. But Alina wasn't just fighting for peace of mind, she was fighting for her life. And the scariest part? The enemy looked exactly like her. It started on a night when the rain refused to stop. Alina lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, listening to the storm beat against the glass. Outside, the world looked drowned, but it was the inside of her own mind that felt flooded. She had been living alone since her mother's passing, and though she tried to pretend she was coping, her nights told a different story. That evening, as thunder rolled in the distance, she thought she heard something else. Something quieter, hidden between the cracks of silence. At first, it was just a faint murmur, like wind sneaking under the door, but then the words took shape. "You can't do this anymore." She sat up, her breath caught in her throat. The apartment was empty, the door locked, the window shut. She told herself it was just exhaustion. She'd been working long hours, at the bookstore, trying to distract herself from grief, but deep inside she knew this wasn't just tiredness. The next night, it happened again. Only this time the whisper was clearer. "You're all alone now." Alina pressed her palms over her ears, telling herself it wasn't real. Yet the words seemed to echo from inside her head, bouncing off walls she couldn't escape. The whispers didn't just haunt her nights. They crept into her mornings, followed her on her bus rides, even lingered between the shelves at the bookstore. She began making mistakes at work, handing customers the wrong books, forgetting simple things. People noticed. Her manager gently asked if she was okay. She smiled and said yes, but her eyes betrayed her. That weekend, she avoided going out. The whispers had grown bolder, darker. They didn't just talk, they accused. They told her she wasn't enough, that her life was meaningless without her mother. At one point, Alina slammed her hands against the mirror, shouting back at her own reflection, as if fighting a presence only she could feel. When she collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her face, something inside her shifted. Fear, yes, but also defiance. She realized she was at war, not with the world outside, but with the shadows inside. The whispers wanted to consume her, but somewhere deep within, a fragile spark of hope still flickered. As the storm outside finally began to calm, Alina whispered back for the first time, "I'm still here." The morning after she spoke back to the whispers, Alina felt different. Not healed, not free, but changed. Like she had taken a first step into a battlefield she couldn't yet see. She moved slowly around her apartment, making tea, forcing herself to eat half a slice of toast. Every sound, the kettle boiling, the clock ticking, felt louder than usual, almost exaggerated. Maybe because for once she wasn't only listening for the whispers, but they returned anyway. She was brushing her teeth when she noticed it. In the mirror, her own reflection seemed to hesitate. Her hand moved, but her reflection looked like it lagged, just a fraction of a second too slow. Alina froze, foam clinging to her lips, toothbrush suspended midair. That's when she heard it, not from the walls, not from the air, but from the glass itself. "You're breaking." She dropped the toothbrush into the sink. The words didn't echo in the room, they vibrated inside her bones. She leaned closer to the mirror, staring into her own wide, bloodshot eyes. Her reflection's lips hadn't moved, but she swore. The eyes were sharper, darker, almost accusing. Alina backed away, her hands trembling. The whispers were no longer satisfied with lingering in the dark. Now they had a face, her own. At work, she tried to bury herself in routine. Customers came in, asked about novels, wandered the aisles. But every time she caught her reflection, in a display case or a shop window, her chest tightened. She saw those same eyes staring back at her, reminding her she wasn't safe, not even from herself. That evening, her friend Clara called. They hadn't spoken in weeks. Clara's voice was warm, grounding, and for a few minutes Alina almost felt normal. But when Clara asked, How are you holding up? Something inside Alina cracked. She wanted to confess everything, the whispers, the mirror, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she forced a laugh and said, "I'm fine." After the call, guilt ate at her. She wasn't fine. She was unraveling thread by thread. The whispers grew louder that night, relentless, circling her bed like predators. "You'll never escape. You're weak. You're nothing." Alina pulled the blanket over her head, squeezing her eyes shut, hands over her ears. But the words slid right through, piercing her. She rocked herself, whispering back, "I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here." It didn't silence them, but it gave her something. The faintest anchor, a thread of resistance. The whispers laughed, cruel and hollow. Yet somewhere inside, hope flickered again. The war had only just begun. By the third week, Alina barely recognized herself. Sleep came in broken fragments. Her appetite vanished, and the shadows beneath her eyes deepened into bruised hollows. But what scared her most wasn't her body falling apart. It was her mind turning against her. The whispers no longer waited for night. They followed her into the daylight, slithering into her thoughts while she stood in line for coffee, while she handed change to customers at the bookstore. They had become constant companions, sometimes murmuring, sometimes shouting. "You're wasting space. You don't matter. End it." On a gray Sunday morning, Alina forced herself out of the apartment. She couldn't explain why, maybe instinct, maybe desperation. She wandered into the park near her building, where bare winter trees clawed at the sky. She sat on a bench hugging her knees and tried to focus on the cold air filling her lungs. That's when a voice broke through, not from the inside, not a whisper, but a human voice. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." Alina turned. An older man sat at the far end of the bench. His coat was worn, his beard streaked with gray, and his eyes carried a tired kindness. She froze, wary, unsure if he was real or another trick of her mind. "I've had better days," she said quietly. The man chuckled softly. "Haven't we all?" Then, after a pause, he added, "But you're still here. That means something." Those words landed like a stone in her chest. Still here. They were the same words she had whispered to herself in the dark. How could he know? For a moment, Alina wanted to open up, to spill everything. The voices, the mirror, the fear of losing herself completely. But she didn't. She simply nodded, and the man gave her a small, understanding smile before standing to leave. After he walked away, the whispers hissed louder than ever. "He can't save you, no one can, you're pathetic." Alina pressed her hands against her ears, shaking her head, tears stinging her eyes. Yet a sliver of defiance grew, because for one fleeting moment, someone outside her mind had seen her. And that tiny connection felt like a rope thrown into the storm. That night, when the whispers returned, she clung to that memory. She replayed the stranger's words in her head. "You're still here." Over and over, like armor. The voices raged, but for the first time, they didn't win. The fourth week was the breaking point. Alina woke in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, her sheets twisted like ropes around her body. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were screams. Her reflection in the darkened window twisted into shapes that didn't belong to her. Her own face sneered back with eyes that dripped with hate. "Why fight? You're already gone." She stumbled to the bathroom, gripping the sink until her knuckles whitened. She stared into the mirror, trembling, her breath ragged. "Stop," she whispered. Her reflection smirked. The voices laughed. Something inside her snapped, not into pieces, but into fire. She slammed her fist against the sink. "No, you don't get to take me. You don't get to decide." Her voice echoed in the small bathroom, raw and defiant. The whispers surged like a tidal wave, furious as though they'd been challenged for the first time. They threw every weapon at her: shame, fear, memories of loss. But Alina didn't back down. She shouted over them, words tumbling out in broken gasps. I am here. I matter. I am not yours. The mirror didn't shatter, but for the first time, it seemed to lose its power. The reflection stared back. Only her, exhausted and tear-stained, but hers. She slid down against the wall, shaking, sobbing, but alive. That spark inside her, fragile as it was, had grown into something more. Hope wasn't a flicker anymore. It was a flame. By dawn, Alina knew she couldn't keep fighting alone. The park stranger's words replayed in her mind. You're still here. That means something. If survival meant clinging to that truth, then she needed help to hold on. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone. For the first time, she searched for a crisis line. Her heart pounded as she dialed. When a calm voice answered, You're not alone. Talk to me. She broke down completely. The dam inside her burst and everything spilled out. The whispers, the mirrors, the nights she thought she wouldn't make it. The counselor didn't rush her, didn't judge her, just listened. And in that listening, Alina felt a weight lift. It wasn't gone, not yet, but lighter, because now someone else was carrying a piece of it with her. That morning, as light seeped through her window, Alina realized she had done something powerful. She had chosen to fight, chosen to reach out, chosen to live. The whispers didn't vanish, but they weren't in control anymore. Alina thought reaching out for help would silence the voices, but she quickly learned survival wasn't that simple. The whispers didn't disappear after that first call. They fought harder, angrier, as if they knew they were losing their grip. That night the storm returned. The rain battered the windows and thunder cracked across the sky. Inside her apartment, the darkness felt alive, heavy with malice. The whispers slithered from every corner, louder than they had ever been. Pathetic. Weak. No one cares. Alina covered her ears, pacing the room, her chest heaving. But the voices pierced through, filling her with dread. Her reflection in the window flickered again. This time, more monstrous than before. Its lips twisted into a cruel smile, eyes black with rage. You don't belong here. For a heartbeat, Alina froze. Fear nearly swallowed her. But then she remembered the counselor's words from earlier that day. When the voices grow loudest, it's because you're stronger than they are. That's when you fight back. She steadied her breath. Fists clenched. No, she said aloud, voice trembling at first, then growing louder. I belong here. This is my life. You are not me. The whispers screamed, overlapping, deafening. Her reflection slammed its palms against the glass from the other side, as though trying to break through. Alina felt the air grow colder, the walls pressing in. Tears streamed down her face, but she stood her ground. She screamed over the storm, over the voices, every word tearing from her chest like fire. I am still here. The lights flickered. The room seemed to shake. For a terrifying moment she thought she had lost, that the voices would consume her. But then, something shifted. The reflection in the glass wavered, its black eyes dissolving back into her own. The whispers faltered, losing their edge. Their volume dropped from screams to snarls, then to faint murmurs, until they were nothing more than background noise. Alina collapsed to her knees, gasping, drenched in sweat. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was hers. Not the suffocating silence of fear, but the stillness of victory. She had faced the darkest part of herself, and she was still standing. The whispers weren't gone forever. She knew that. They might return tomorrow, next week, maybe in the quiet hours of another storm. But something had changed. They no longer owned her. As dawn crept into the room, soft light washing over her, Alina whispered one last time, steady and unshaken. You don't win. I do. And for the first time in months, the only voice that answered back was her own. The morning after the storm felt different. The light that streamed through Alina's window wasn't just sunlight. It was proof. Proof that she had survived the longest night of her life. She moved slowly, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her steps were steady. She brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window where the whispers had screamed through the night. The glass reflected only her own tired, tear-stained face. For the first time in weeks, it looked like her, not a distorted stranger, not a shadow waiting to consume her. Just Alina. The voices weren't gone. She could still feel them at the edges of her mind, like faint static. But they were distant now, and she realized something important. They might never vanish completely, but that didn't mean they had to control her. That afternoon, she walked back to the park. The bare winter, trees still clawed at the sky. The air still bit at her skin, but everything looked sharper, more alive. She sat on the same bench where the old man had spoken to her weeks ago. He wasn't there this time, but his words remained, echoing in her memory. "You're still here. That means something." For the first time, she believed it. Over the next days, Alina began to build small routines. She wrote in her notebook again, not just fears this time, but victories. Every moment she resisted, every time she chose to get out of bed, every day she showed up to work despite the weight inside her. She called Clara back, this time allowing herself to be honest. She even scheduled an appointment with a therapist, knowing she didn't have to carry this battle alone. It wasn't a clean triumph. Some nights, the whispers still stirred, cruel and heavy. Some mornings she still woke with dread pressing against her chest. But she had something stronger now, a weapon she had forged in the darkest hours, the knowledge that she could endure. One evening as she closed the bookstore, Alina caught her reflection in the glass door. For a moment, fear flared. But then, she saw the difference. Her eyes weren't empty anymore, they held fire steady and unshaken. She smiled faintly at herself, a promise unspoken. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." The whispers might return, but they would never own her again. She had walked through the dark, and she had carried her hope with her. That was survival. Not silence. Not absence of fear, but the choice to keep living despite it. And with that, Alina stepped out into the night, not haunted, but whole. Alina's story doesn't end with silence because healing is never simple. The whispers still exist in the corners of her mind, but they no longer control her. She learned that survival isn't about pretending the darkness doesn't exist. It's about carrying light with you even when the shadows follow. She found strength not in being flawless, but in choosing, day after day, to keep going. And that choice, more than anything, became her victory. Because in the end, survival isn't always about conquering your demons. Sometimes it's simply about refusing to let them win.